Hello, everyone. My name is Jesse Lang.
My name is Karen Deep Jand.
Welcome to the Golden Note. We are covering an album called Document by R.E.M. This is going to be our first album in the list of 1,001 albums that you should be listening to before you die. It was written by author Robert Dimery in 2005, but there's been a few updated versions. So I think this one is from 2017 is the most updated
Great.
version of 1,001 freaking albums that you have to listen to. That's a lot of albums, and we're gonna attempt the mammoth feat of listening to all of them and reviewing them here and letting you know which ones we think are pretty good and you should give a listen to, and maybe we'll help you by telling you what albums not to listen to and that are kind of trash. So
That's for sure.
yes, that's for sure. We are two musicians, especially this guy over here, Karen. He's got a lot of experience going to music school and things like that. I've just been playing music for a long time. I don't have the academic credentials like this guy over here, but I feel like I still have some stuff to offer. And together, I think our opinions will be worthwhile for you while you're
How you look
listening.
at it, you learn music wherever you go, and listening to albums is definitely the way to do it. But we come from two different schools of music, come together, make some great stuff while we're at it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get started with Document by R.E.M. This album came out in 1987. Uh, Apparently, according to my notes, it was critically acclaimed upon its release. It is certified platinum in the US currently. So that means a lot of people liked it and listened to it. Context for the time 1987 was when a lot of like the hair metal bands were really popular in the United States and Canada. We had bands like Def Leppard, Motley Crue, kind of being like at the forefront of popular rock music at the time. Some people loved it, some people very much hated it. Um, this album's different though. This album is not a hair metal band or hair metal album by any means. Um, this year specifically, Guns N' Roses released Appetite for Destruction. I believe that's the exact title of it. That was huge. That was like an insanely popular album. Hard rock vibes. It was like it drew from hair metal, but it's very much like in the hard rock vein. It was more edgy. So this is the context that Document by REM is released. Right off the bat, let's talk about the title, Document. Karen, what do we think about the title, Document?
You know, I believe a lot of these songs are like a collection of short stories, and I think that's where document comes about. It's a documentation of these little moments in their life, these little stories that they want to share. A lot of different dynamics when it comes to it, different characters, different arcs. So I think that's where the title document comes to play.
That's very generous. I think it's trash. I hate this album name so much.
Oh,
Document. I don't know. I'm
I like it. I like documents. This album's called Document. What's there not to like?
It's so boring.
You know, you can't forget it though. Every time you open up your computer, you see my documents, and then you're always going to think about this shitty album Document,
Okay.
according to Jesse.
You like it for its inescapable essence from your life, the fact that you're always dealing with documents. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know. To me, if I were in the band and my bandmate was like, okay, we're going to call this Document, I'm like, what? Why? It's real. No one's going to buy this album, but it's certified platinum. So I guess people did buy it. Yeah. I don't like the title, but whatever. I guess with Karen's, I like your poetic description of why they have called it Document. If that's the reason, then for sure, like, I just don't think from a pop perspective, if you're trying to sell your album to many people, it doesn't get you excited. Most people excited to hear the word
I'm a
Document.
big fan of
you know?
one-word album titles.
Okay.
It's catchy, it's easy to sing, conversation. Hey, check out that album Document. You know, it's nice. It's nice that way.
Okay.
Accessible in that way.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So we are in disagreement with the title. Now, the album cover, if you are picking up this vinyl in the record store, I'm also not a big fan of the cover.
Yeah, the cover looks like
The cover's trash. Yeah. It's just it looks like some dude in his yard, I think. And it's like all black and white except for the like left side of the album. There's like some color. I'm blanking a little bit on exactly what it looks like, but so far, in my opinion, the title's trash. The cover is also kind of trash. So right off the bat, picking this thing up in a record store back in 1987, I'd be really hard pressed to actually want to buy this thing. It's not like giving me excitement. I don't really know. I'm not really liking the initial uh, essence of this album before listening. However, REM, I believe, released music before this, so I would have, if I was a fan of REM before this, I would have used that as like, okay, I like their other stuff, so maybe I'll buy this. But yeah, I'm not a big
Mm.
fan of the cover. What do you think? Oh, you pulled it up here.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the cover either. It to me is kind of confusing. I would probably think it's a heavy metal band or an old like folk, maybe
Mm,
jazz record. But I think it does cater to the fans of REM who they know the music and they know what they're expecting to
hmm
some degree. But I think that's a cop out for trying to make something that's truly meaningful on its own right. And I don't think any band should pander to the audience in that way.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Overall, I'm not a fan of the album cover. I think it's a dude taking a picture or something, and it's like we're seeing him taking a picture. But then there's like a bunch of other elements that were like spliced into the album to make it kind of look weird or off-putting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Weird and off-putting is a good way to put it.
Okay. All right. So we've talked about the visual elements of this album. Let's get into the actual music part. I want to start with our familiarity before listening to this album. So I'll start with Karen. What was your
I had
familiarity?
no clue what I was getting myself into.
Okay.
This is like way out of left field for me. There's guitars, and that's about it. That's as far as this familiarity goes. So yeah, this is very new to me, and I had no idea who REM was. I thought they were like a hip hop group when you first suggested it, thinking like that's pretty cool. Maybe they're talking about dreams, like there's some cool poetry happening, but not what I expected. Not at all.
That's so funny that you thought it was a hip hop
I was
group.
hoping.
Wow. Okay. That's really unfamiliar then.
Yeah.
Dang. I was more familiar. I guess I kind of listened to a lot more classic rock stuff than I guess you did when you were younger.
Yeah.
So I was familiar with REM. I had never listened to this album in full, but I did listen. I've already listened to "It's the End of the World" as we know it, because that's like in classic rock world, that's a very classic song. And the one I love is also an amazing song that I personally really like. We're already getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but those two I was familiar with, but the rest of the album I was not very familiar with. So this truly is, for an album on the whole, new to both of us. Okay, so I want to get started with the first track. We're probably just going to highlight a few tracks. We're not going to go exactly track by track, but we'll see what happens.
Cool.
It starts off with the finest work song. So right off the bat for me, it's reminding me of the Tragically Hip. So for any Canadian music listeners out there, fun fact: we're both from Canada. So the Tragically Hip's a big band here in the United States. Not so much a big hip or a big hit. But it's reminding me of them. They've got like a bluesy feel to the music, to this song at least.
Yeah.
And at least from my perspective, listening to REM, I'm not really used to hearing them this bluesy. So it was kind of interesting. Like, wow, okay,
Okay.
they're giving me a lot of blues rock vibes here. The vocals also kind of reminded me of Eddie Vedder on this track, which is also surprising because I never got that vibe from REM before.
Hmm.
To me, the singer is for REM is really unique, has a really cool voice. Um, but I never got Eddie Vedder vibes from it, but from this song I did. So it was kind of like interesting listening to a song from them that isn't really famous, and I'm getting all these other influences from
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
that I wasn't expecting. Karen, I don't know if you have any notes on this track.
For me, listening to this whole album, I really picked out a lot of the arrangement, the musical elements, as far as the guitars go, the mix, sort of production elements, and how it's recorded. So what stood out to me with this track was kind of how the guitars were providing a soundscape. It was almost like Coldplay, almost like Interpol in a sense, where it's more of textures than it is like here's a rock guitar part exactly. But I felt that the guitars were interesting and the snares treatment, the reverb on the snare really set the tone for the space the sound, the song lives in, and really had a great cradle for the vocalist because I felt this whole album was very. It sit well with the vocals, but especially right off the top with the first track, it was very apparent that it was all intentional, and the space created for the vocalist was really pleasant.
Okay. Okay, so you like the vocals, and yeah, you really came at this, I think, because we briefly talked about this album before recording.
Hmm.
Um, very focused on the guitars.
Yeah,
It's like definitely a central element for you in this.
definitely. There's a lot of guitar focus on there, and it's very interesting treatments, harmonies. So that's gonna be a recurring theme for my takes on these songs.
Cool. Okay. Oh, and I also want to say for the Tragically Hip, I mentioned them, and for Eddie Vedder and Pearl Jam, uh, now I mentioned them and how they sound like them a little bit on this track, but those two bands weren't really a thing until after this album came out. So really, they sound like this.
Yeah,
So it's kind of cool digging in and being like, okay, this probably served as inspiration for the Tragically Hip and for Pearl Jam and Eddie Vedder,
it's got to be.
as they went forward. Okay, so the next four songs after this weren't really a standout for me. I don't really have a lot of notes for these. I don't know, Karen, if you had anything you wanted to say about any other tracks before we get to Strange.
Okay, well, spoiler: After Strange is my favorite song.
Okay.
So in that, keeping that in mind, I felt that these next songs really helped craft a story, craft a tone of the album, taking you on these different sort of moody textures. Some melodic bass lines happen to be involved, and there's a lot of the same use of the guitar soundscapes, but there's just subtle variations that kept you intrigued as a guitar player. It's something that you would be like, oh, I can play that, or I want to figure that out, or that seems like it suits the song and it moves it forward in terms of each song going through the album until this point. So I felt they all serve their purpose, but they're all kind of mid.
Yeah. Serve their purpose, but all kind of mid. Yeah, that's a long way for me of just being like, yeah, like they're fine. They didn't stand out to me, especially with the standout tracks coming after them. They kind of just were, yeah, they didn't feel as great. But once we got to Strange,
Mm.
that's when my ears perked up a little bit. I thought it was interesting. I thought the harmonies were really cool in it. In general, in this album, I think the harmonies are really fantastic. The
Yes.
just like how they crafted the melodies. And it leads really well into It's the End of the World as We Know It thematically, right? Because it's talking about like, like strange world. Like that's what he's talking about, right? A
Yeah.
strange time, strange world, and then it goes to It's the End of the World. So it really fits thematically. And upon further research, this is actually a cover.
No way.
Apparently, this is not even an original song. I didn't realize that. Maybe in the description box we can tell you who it is a cover of, because I didn't put that in my notes, and I'm not gonna look it up now. But it is a cover of another band, another artist, and another song. So that's pretty cool. Um,
Good
so
to
yeah,
know.
so that this one perked my ears up, and then it goes into the song "It's the End of the World as We Know It." I've already mentioned it a couple times now. To me, this is an iconic song.
Mm.
This is fantastic. Just like all the course itself is just like really catchy, super memorable. Of course, the flow of the song, it's very like it's almost like he's rapping
Yeah.
in the verses, and he's like going in very quick succession. Kind of creates like a chaotic vibe, which makes sense because it's the end of the world as we know it, right? That's the meaning of the song. And yeah, just like further context and background, like um I was very shocked when Karen told me before filming he doesn't know this. He didn't know the song before listening to it.
That's going to be a common trend as well.
It might be a common trend as we record these videos. Karen didn't know the song until we listened to this album. Whereas to me, like I've known this song since I was a single digit human. Like I've known this song since I was 8 years old. So yeah, like, and this is in movies, right? Like I think it's in Chicken Little or something.
Wow.
It's definitely been in my world part of the popular culture sphere
Mm.
since I was a kid. So to me, this song's like a no-brainer. This is like an amazing song, classic. I just checking my notes. So yeah, the chorus to me is the crown jewel of the song, and then the backing vocals for the chorus really shine and elevate it. I just think when they were in the studio, probably making this track, like, they were probably like, we gotta hit, boys. Like, this is amazing, And it's just like so intentional what they did, and yeah, this. I don't know if this is my favorite song on the album. It's definitely top two. Yeah, we'll have to decide by the end of this review. But
Mhm.
anyways, do you have any thoughts on this
For
song?
me, I want to give it away. This is my favorite song on
This
the
is your
album.
favorite song, okay?
The payoff is worth it if you made it this far in the album. It feels great. It's very anthemic. and it's got such a punk rock vibe to it. It's so maybe it's a little familiar because of that. So the familiarity helps me like it a little bit more. But I'll agree with the vocals. That is a crown jewel. The chorus, all of that stuff. It makes you want to sing with them. It makes you feel connected, and it makes you feel like, yeah, I'm on board with this story. I'm on board where you took me. Although I didn't like getting here. So yeah,
Okay.
definitely, it's great. It's well done, and is much needed to have this song in the album at that time.
Yeah.
If it wasn't there, half the album wouldn't be there. I know,
Okay.
or people wouldn't get past the second half of it. I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a much needed pickup in the album, I guess
Yes.
you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah. Agreed. And then it goes to the one I love. To me, this is another classic one. I also grew up with this song, listening to it. Although this was more from my dad playing his music and his playlists like around.
Hmm.
Is more I think where I got this one from. Um, I really think this is my personal favorite. Like I definitely listen to this track more often in my life than I do It's the End of the World as We Know It. Um, I just think like the guitars are really cool. It's got like a cool like country western vibe to it, especially in the intro. But yeah, it's throughout the song. Um, it's dark. The lyrics are dark. However, it's one of those tricky songs because it's talking about love, and the first part of it is, this one goes out to the one I love. Most people don't listen to lyrics past the first line.
Yep.
So, unfortunately, and the singers talked about this, um, people will use this for their wedding. This song, they'll like put this in as like some sort of like they think it's a romantic song,
Hmm.
but he's actually talking about how the one he loves is like, or like the person he's dating is essentially he feels like they're a prop, and they're just kind of there to be by his side and like accompany him, but he doesn't really feel anything past that. And it's kind of like a very doomer take on like being in a relationship with someone,
Yeah.
and like this is the one I love, is like just this person who I feel like is just sitting here.
I'd say this album is just a whole list of doomer takes.
Yeah.
It really is a kind of like a critique on doomer takes as they are. The sort of dark side of things, the edgy side of things, the angle of our perspectives that we try to ignore, but we don't take a moment to appreciate because it's uncomfortable, because it's something that makes us think twice. And I think this album's full of that.
Yeah.
Bunch of doomer
A
takes.
bunch of doomer takes. Yeah. Well, there's another song about like McCarthy or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is like a politician from the 80s, way before our time.
Yeah, yeah.
um okay, so yeah, I love this song. There's also a cool, I just want to talk about the guitars more in this
Mm.
song as well. I think it's a big standout. And I think there's like a dripping course effect in the guitars that like make it sound really cool.
There's some heavy choruses happening there, but it's done well. It's not grating. It's very pleasant sounding. Yeah.
Okay, I want to get into the technical music standpoint here for a second. How would you rate this album in terms of like musicianship, difficulty of playing, things like that?
Yeah, yeah. Musicianship, I'm gonna say it's a good 7. The parts are relatively simple, but the execution is very tight, cohesive, and all with purpose. And I think a lot of that comes a lot from the drum performance. I know I haven't done my research
The
in terms of
drum performance.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That energy really drives all of it. Where the guitars sit on top of that nicely, they kind of piggyback on the ship type of thing. So musicianship all across the board is solid. It's solid, but I wish there was a little bit more interest. Coming from a jazz background, I always want some spice, and maybe that's in my nature, in my blood. So a little spice is nice, but it was a good palatable overall. Now, when it comes to the technical stuff, recording, maybe the arrangement of things, like how the guitars were sitting and all that, I thought at that time very interesting sound. I don't think I could imagine a sound so clear, so put together in terms of those multiple guitars, the layers of them, the way they're spaced out. They're wide, they're still quite close at times, and so they kind of blend in and out of the. They play with the vocal performance as far as taking up the front and center stage, and I really like that a lot. So I think it's a good achievement when it comes to tracking guitars and getting that sound, that tone correct, because all the tones on the guitars, including that chorusy stuff, was pretty spot on for what this was trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I find it interesting that you said the drums were like the thing that really brought it all together for
Mm.
you, or like from a technical standpoint is the highlight. Um, I'm a drummer. That was like my first instrument that I learned, and I don't know if they stood out to me, but you don't have to stand out when you're a drummer in a band, right? Like, you don't have to be Keith Moon constantly taking the shine away from anyone else in the band.
Mm-hmm.
Your job really is to, like, have a steady beat, make the song work, and I think the drummer did a fantastic job of that for sure throughout this album. For me, it's the vocals. I think the
Mm.
vocals are the standout thing in this whole album. The vocalist has such a unique voice. The backing vocals throughout this album really allow the songs to shine and reach their full potential, I would
Yeah,
say.
I would agree. The
Yeah.
backing vocals, whenever they came in, I felt like it was such a treat.
Yeah. Just the
Felt good.
ideas, just like the melody ideas of, like, okay, what can we put behind the main melody to elevate it? And they just hit it spot on, I
More
think, every
melody.
time. More melody, even more. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Let's move on. I only got a few songs to talk about left. There's some cool saxophone in Fireplace for that song. I don't have any other notes about that song though.
Yeah, I like the saxophone too.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of the spice I was
There's
mentioning.
some more instrumentation than just drums and guitar
Yeah,
and singing,
I
right?
wish there was a little bit more of that, because I felt like
Yeah.
hinting at it even for little moments, maybe as a replacement for a backing vocal, would have been more cohesive, rather than it just being its own feature.
Right.
But I imagined maybe he was only available for a day, so they got one track in, and that
Maybe.
usually happens.
Yeah. Also, there was some piano, like, kind of sprinkled in for different songs,
Yes,
but it wasn't by any means like a primary feature. Next song for me that I had was Lightnin Hopkins. I thought this was a cool song. I think the bass really stands out on this one. Some cool bass lines, and it is fast paced, very hype song. So I like this track, and it's not like, at least from my knowledge, it's not like a huge R.E.M. song. So it's a cool, like, deep cut song that people might want to take a listen to.
for me this was a pass.
Is it pass? Yeah. Okay.
I glazed over it. I went back a few times, listened to it again. I just couldn't wrap my head around it.
Okay.
Yeah, it was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll happen, right? Oddfellows Local. I thought this was a cool brooding song. Is again something that I feel like would have inspired the Tragically Hip after they became a band. And there's a fire truck alarm at the end of the track. I'm just reading my notes here. That matches with the lyrics. So some more cool elements added to really elevate the song. But other than that, those are the songs I had notes for.
I got one more note to touch on Oddfellows.
Okay.
He starts making this gnawing sound at the end, like he's screaming or grunting or like
Is that the
biting.
fire truck alarm?
Well, it was around that time,
Okay.
but it was like in his vocal performance.
Yeah.
I think he was just really feeling like that energy, that dark energy that was happening. And I remember listening to it thinking, there's no fucking way he committed to put this on the record. Somebody had to talk him into it, because at this point it was like, dude, this is kind of silly. Like, are you seriously making those noises right now?
Right.
And he was going at it. And I appreciate and respect that, to end off the album with some gnawing noises. Just like grunting, like he's trying to bite off a limb from somebody, you know? I appreciated that. It was very visceral.
Okay.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I would have cut that.
You would have got.
Yeah, I would have been like, nah, that's silly. Fade that out.
You appreciate the bravery, but you yourself wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's the album document from R.E.M. Unless you have any additional notes, and then we'll give our scores.
Mhm.
Do you-
I think that's it.
That's
We
it?
covered a lot of important points that I want to touch on, like the guitars, the overall vibe. Now, I do want to touch on the last thing was sort of how the album felt like an album.
Okay.
It was a bit longer than I would have liked in terms of it shaping the arc and where it wants to take you, but it did have purpose in terms of bringing the listener to different moments in the album. And I appreciate that. That's something that we don't usually find too often nowadays in the music that we listen to, or that is more represented in the public sphere. So the idea of the album in of itself is just reminded that there's a lot of ways that people can go about doing so, and this way, their presentation of their album was very. It took in a slow but a very interesting journey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cohesive
Cohesive.
might be the word. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cohesive album. I agree. It's definitely, this album was not thrown together, mishmash with a bunch of songs. It was, they had some sort of vision, and you can tell when you're listening to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, for me, so for those of you who may not have watched us before, what we kind of do here is we do a rating out of 5 for me, and Karen's going to give a rating out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to put that together and make it out of 10, and then so we'll give you a rating out of 10 with our combined scores. And then if the album is a 9 or more, it gets the Golden Note certification from us, which means it's a very exciting and worthwhile album that you should listen to.
Hmm.
So for me, I'm going to give this a 3.5 out of 5.
Wow. I'm going to give it a solid 3.
A solid 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So quick maths, Karen. What is that?
Oh, this is the hard part. Definitely not 9. It's 6.5.
6.5 out of 10.
Yeah.
Dang. Okay.
Aren't we harsh?
Wouldn't have liked that grade in school.
That's the only grade I got in school.
Fair enough. But it's not horrible. It's definitely passing, and it's getting a solid grade. I might, as a if I were the teacher, I would be maybe giving this a bell curve and rounding it to 7. So maybe we'll say 6.5 to 7 out of 10
Sure.
as a kind of general vibes for this album. There's some very standout tracks, like the one I love, and It's the End of the World.
Mm-hmm.
There's some other tracks that have some cool elements. There's some tracks towards the beginning that are kind of forgettable. But overall, 6.5 to 7 out of 10. So you decide with that score if you'd like to listen to this. But R.E.M. as a band, I would say, is definitely a worthwhile band to give a listen to. One more thing before we end off this video, just adding further context because I missed this at the beginning. R.E.M. was one of the bands that was kind of like an oasis for you if you hated all that hair metal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This was one of the only popular bands in the 80s that did like guitar-driven music that wasn't like Poison or Motley Crue or the Scorpions, right? Like they were more like indie rock vibes with like blues rock and things like that. So if
they're
you
the guys who didn't buy the Boss OD1 but bought the other pedals
yes
first.
yeah so that's some more context as well. Maybe we'll cut it in at this part at the beginning of the video,
Sure.
or we'll leave it at the end, but just to like give them their flowers, because I feel like the score 6.5 to 7 out of 10 is a bit rough, but I mean whatever. But just for people, just for more context for the historical part,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this was kind of like an Oasis band, so I've heard, where not the band Oasis. Let me make that clear. This was just like something that music listeners who liked rock music but didn't like the popular hair metal stuff, they would eat this up because this was a diamond in the rough at that time.
I'd say definitely to add to context is we're filming this in 2024, end of 2024 into 2025. And a lot of our youth don't know what an album is or sat down and listened to a full-length album and share that moment with their friends.
Yeah.
And I believe that we're on the cusp of counterculture revitalizing itself once again, just like how fashion always does. So exploring these albums is a reminder that, hey, if you want to check out something that's full-length that you actually want to dive deep into, maybe that would play my 3, bring it up to a 3.5. That
Okay.
would, because it's sort of like a reminder that this is an album that's put together. And if you want to enjoy an album front to back, this is one that's worthwhile.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Let's end it off there.
Perfect.
Thanks for watching.
Yes, thanks for watching and listening.